Attention musicians, I know if you're like me, being stuck in this quarantine, you've been sitting around playing every song you know. Are you looking to learn more songs? Well, I have the app for you. Whether you're a professional musician or a beginner, Ultimate Guitar is an amazing app for you. For just $2.99, you get the chords and tabs for over 1 million songs on guitar, bass, and ukulele. You also get a bunch of tools, man, amazing tools like a tuner, metronome, chord library, lessons, videos, and more. Go to ultimateguitar.com or download the app from your app store today. That's Ultimate Guitar. Let's get down. Hey gang, are you new to this podcast? Have you subscribed on Spotify, Stitcher, or Apple and realized that you can only access the 20 most recent shows on these platforms? Do you, my friend, want to binge on How Did I Get Here? Well, you can listen to every show that we've ever put out on the Podbean app. That's right. Go to your app store, look up Podbean. You can also find all of your other favorite shows on there. Has tons and tons of shows. But you can go back through our archives and listen to conversations with Sweet Spirit, Zeely, The Wind and the Wave, Ray Wiley Hubbard, Marcia Ball, Moving Panoramas, Dana Falconberry, Quiet Company, Dwight Twilley, The Bluebonnets, and literally hundreds and hundreds, over 1,000 podcasts of just How Did I Get Here on there. Not to mention all of your other favorites. Just download the Podbean app from your app store and start listening today. Let's get down.
And you may ask yourself, well, how did I get here?
It's time for How Did I Get Here? And now here is your host,
All right. Hello, I'm Johnny. I'm your host. Welcome to the show. I hope you guys are all having a good week, whatever it is you're doing this week. There's all kinds of craziness in the news. But I have some interesting news. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees for 2021 came out. There's 16 nominees. They got the Foo Fighters, got Iron Maiden, Rage Against the Machine, Devo, New York Dolls, Todd Rundgren, Mary J. Blige, Jay-Z, Tina Turner, Kate Bush, Chaka Khan, Carole King. Hard to believe Carole King's not already in there. That's kind of weird. Fela Kuti, LL Cool J, and Dionne Warwick. What do you think of that? What does that do? Oh, and last but not least, sorry, my friends, the Go-Go's. All right? The Go-Go's definitely deserve to be in there. I don't know if you guys know the story of the Go-Go's. I know it intimately. I know these guys. I know Jane and Kathy and Charlotte. Kathy and I have a band, and she lives here in Austin. And we've been a little bit in contact throughout this pandemic. But she wrote a fantastic memoir this year that came out, or last year. All I Ever Wanted. Check that out. But the Go-Go's have a documentary that came out last year. It's absolutely fantastic. You can find it on Showtime. I use Amazon and got the Showtime add-on there and saw it that way. You might be able to rent it as a one-off, but it's definitely worth seeing. If you're a music fan, if you're a fan of the Go-Go's, maybe if you're a fan of the Go-Go's but you don't know their story, this is definitely worth seeing because they really were fucking pioneers. And this is a long time coming. I mean, they were the first all-female like songs written by the band, performed by the band, and with the number one record, Beauty and the Beat, in 1981. It was on the charts for 6 weeks. 6 weeks, number one. Sorry, not on the charts for 6 weeks, but number one for 6 weeks. So yeah, they definitely deserve to be in there. But you know, I know there's a lot of argument that happens. Like people don't know, like, oh, is Mary J. Blige like a person that's a person that you know that belongs in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or Jay-Z? There's always kind of that argument, like, are they rock and roll? Are they not rock and roll? What do you think of that stuff? I'll post these on our How Did I Get Here Facebook page, and I'll post a link to the article. And you guys tell me what you think. Who are your choices for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? What do you think? Foo Fighters? You think Iron Maiden? I think Iron Maiden deserves to be in there. I think Devo definitely deserves to be in there. In my mind, the New York Dolls deserve to be in there. In my mind, Todd Rundgren deserves to be in there. The Go-Go's for sure. I don't know, man. I don't know about Mary J. Blige being in the... I mean, it should be all-inclusive of everything, but in a style of music, does it bleed into, like, soul singers? Either way, I guess Mary J. Blige, Jay-Z, Tina Turner. I mean, Carole King, it's hard to believe that she's not even in there. You know what I mean? Anyway, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Go to our How Did I Get Here Facebook page. Weigh in on it. Let me know what you think. What do you think of these nominees? Gang, I have a great show for you today. Singer-songwriter from Nashville named Jillette Johnson is my guest today. She has a brand new album called It's a Beautiful Day and I Love You, dropping this Friday, February 12th. That phrase, she got, her husband said that to her, and she wrote a whole song about it. And the album's absolutely gorgeous. It was produced by Joe Pisapia, and she did it there in Nashville. She was a person that was signed to a major label. She went through that whole thing, but now she's taking control of her own career. She's making records on her own terms. She's putting it out on her own terms, and she's a brilliant, brilliant songwriter. There's a great song on there called What Would Jesus Do? And the chorus is like, what would Jesus do? I don't know, but he wouldn't do it my way. Fantastic songwriter, Jillette Johnson. We have a really, really great conversation. She's super duper cool. Find her at JilletteJohnson.com. You'll enjoy this song of hers from her album, It's a Beautiful Day, and I Love You, dropping this Friday, February 12th. The song is called Forgive Her, and enjoy my conversation with the talented and very entertaining Jillette Johnson. Let's get down.
She doesn't really know what she does, what she did to you, darling. Forgive her for she doesn't really know if she
Are you in
goes
Nashville?
where she is.
I am.
You are?
Yeah. Yeah, where are you?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
Oh, I love Austin.
You've been here before. You played South by Southwest, I saw.
I have. And also my husband's family lives in Austin. Like a lot of them live in Austin. So
Oh, nice.
we've spent a lot of time there. But I've also played in Austin many times. And it's always one of my favorite parts of a tour.
Where all have you played here? Do you remember?
Yeah. I've played at the Parish.
Oh, yeah, that's a good place.
It's a good place. I've played at the what's the really, really old theater?
The
that
Paramount?
I'm blanking. Yes, I've played at the Paramount a couple of times.
Awesome.
Loved playing at the Paramount.
Were they your shows, or were you on tour with someone there?
No, I was opening for people. I think I opened for Parker Millsap at the Parish and Penny and Sparrow at the Paramount, and South by I played lots of them. They're kind of blurring together, but yeah.
Excellent. Well, hey, It's a Beautiful Day and I Love You is a really gorgeous album. And
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, you're welcome. I've spent the day listening to not just that, but your other stuff as well. And this is like a rock and roll record.
I'm glad you think so.
Yeah.
I feel that way about it. Yeah.
What was the what made you sort of take that shift and bring in those guitars like that?
Well, I've kind of always wanted to do that and just didn't really know how, because I'm not a guitar player per se. I'm constantly someone who's trying to learn how to play the guitar, but I really don't write songs on the guitar and definitely can't shred. And I'm a big fan of Patty Griffin and David Bowie and these artists who manage to have really, really melodic song structures and chord structures, and they can lean into the grittiness of the guitar. And I think it finally clicked in my head that I was allowed to do that or something, because often I've been in this place where it feels like too much guitar is going to compete with what's happening in the rest of the song and with what's happening at the piano, because I tend to write really complex chord structures as well.
Yes, you do.
And really, I got lucky because I met Joe Pisapia, and he's a genius in a lot of ways. one of which is being able to be an incredible guitar player who pretty much I've only ever heard him enhance with guitar, and that's a real skill.
That is a real skill. Is that so? That's him playing guitar.
That's him playing the guitar. Yeah, he produced the record,
Right.
and he plays most of the guitars on the record. Although Dan Knobler, who engineered the record, also plays guitar here and there.
Well, it's cool because the guitars kind of shift between being like a texture with like dreamy, floaty stuff to like, downright on the title track. It's a Beautiful Day and I Love You. There's like a whole like Brian May trip going on there.
Yeah, we like to joke that that's our rock opera moment.
Yeah. You got like the harmonizing guitars and stuff like that. It's cool. It's very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think my favorite song after listening to it, my personal favorite, I think is Annie. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a melody I connected with right away. How do you how do you write? Are you a walk around with a melody, come up with chords, sing along with the chords, or lyrics, then write stuff? Are you a journaler?
It's kind of all of the above. I do like to journal, but I don't tend to turn journal entries into songs. I think that journaling is a really great tool in like loosening up my brain and allowing for flow to happen of some kind and reflection. But I tend to like to do it all at the same time. That's usually when it works the best for me, when I am open enough that I can put my hands on the piano and immediately something comes out of my mouth and I have a direction. So kind of, I don't think I've ever written a song on purpose. It's always just kind of an accident. And, I never really sit down and say, I'd like to write a song about this today, unless, sometimes I do, but it usually becomes something else. And I think that's good. At least that's good for the way that I like to write, because as long as I'm allowing for there to be a start and then to let things kind of take their own course,
Like
then
get out of your own way.
Yeah, then it feels like something genuine happens when I'm too kind of like, this is the way I want to write, and this is the thing I want to write about, and this is what it needs to sound like. It just kind of it just falls flat. So Annie is a song that I had no intention of writing, but it's a true story. It's about my partner, my husband's ex-girlfriend. Her name is Annie, and we've never met in person, but she, according to everybody in his life, including him, really changed his life and really opened his brain and taught him a lot about how to be a grown-up in a relationship and about how to like be open-hearted. And it truly is a thank you letter to her. And when I finished writing it, I was like, oh no, this probably is going to go on a record and I'm going to have to explain myself to the people that I wrote this about, because it's very intimate and personal to write a letter basically to your partner's ex. But she heard the song before we put it out.
Question. All right. So what did she say?
So we sent it to her about a month before we put it out, and she is a nurse who's been at the front lines working to save people this year. And within the span that it takes to listen to the song, she called my husband and was like so excited. Like she couldn't have had a better reaction. It was really beautiful. And we all got to talk on the phone, and she was just like, so hard because she's in the thick of trying to save people from COVID, that she said it was a really beautiful thing to receive during all that time of giving so much. So it couldn't have gone better. It's really cool.
Wow, what a touching story.
Yeah.
Yeah. When did you record this album?
I recorded it last fall.
You mean like 2020?
No, like 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other last.
So
it's funny how
the other last
do you
fall.
like not count last year? Like it's like,
No, I don't. I mean, it doesn't. We're still in 2020.
it's like
Yeah,
this
no.
elongated hell.
Yeah, kinda. I mean, there's some silver linings to it
Sure.
for me too. But yeah, it was before the pandemic was even a word that I ever used.
Yeah. So you were done with it by the time you had to
Yeah.
stay home with it. So was it going to come out earlier?
Maybe. This is my first album that I am self-releasing. So I had a little more flexibility with time frame. And what's been really beautiful about that is I've been able to give it everything that I've got. So I recorded it and knew that I was going to be working really, really hard to do it justice.
Right,
I just
right.
didn't know how long that was going to take. And then when the pandemic set in, there was a decision that was made to put the record out in 2021 because if touring does come back this year, that it's helpful to have a relevant release. But I don't think that's going to happen. So we'll see.
I don't either, man. I'm a musician as well. And
Okay,
and that's
cool.
how I make my living, and it's been weird.
Yeah, are you usually on the road a
To
lot?
say the least. Well, not like I used to be, like touring. I'm in a cover band, so usually like, definitely Friday and Saturday I'm doing stuff out of town, maybe out of state,
Yeah.
whatever. But like anyway, yeah, playing shows is it's very odd not doing it for now, coming up on a year. So you're putting this record out. This is the first release that you're putting this out, and it's totally under your control. Do you have a manager?
I have a group of dedicated and highly skilled professionals that are in my brain trust. I don't have one person doing it, and it's kind of cool. I've never done it this way. I'm doing a lot, and so far it's been very democratic. But I'm kind of like the president, and it's been a cool approach.
That's interesting. Let me ask you this about your husband. A couple of things.
Okay.
He called you and said it's a beautiful day and I love you. Is that what happened? What's the story with that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He did.
Well, that's really nice.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Yeah. I bet he makes other husbands and boyfriends this is one of those things where like other husbands and boyfriends are like, dude, you're blowing the curve.
Oh, he makes everyone look bad. I mean, when we first started dating, we went on a double date with a couple friends of ours who I think they were engaged, and we had only been seeing each other for maybe a couple of months. And he opens every door for me. In fact, like, I'm like, hey, you don't have to do that. Like, I get that you're a really sweet human, but I'm perfectly capable of opening the doors. But he gets a lot of joy out of it. So after dinner, we walked to the car, and he just goes and opens the door for me. And our friends were like, "Are you serious?" It's just like small gesture kind of stuff. He's a real Southern gentleman. And I'm from New York and California, so the Southern gentleman thing is pretty new for me. It took me a while to kind of just let it happen.
Yeah. And it seems like just from your songs, you're a pretty independent person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am.
Well,
And
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, I think that's one of the kind of the topics that I like to ride in this record and in the kinds of songs I write right now, because that realization that you can have both things is a really beautiful one, that like you can be coupled and kind of in that place in your life where you're content and, like doing old people things, and also still the person that you always were, independent, having your own career, having fun. Like, those two things don't have to be at odds with each other. I think I'm really grateful that I'm learning that, because one without the other is not a very happy life, I don't think.
No, you're right. It's kind of unfulfilled.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's this kind of like story that a lot of artists, I don't know if you relate to this, but I used to tell myself a lot that as part of my living in New York, like, you're not really doing it right unless it's hard, or like you're the pain and the struggle have to be there. And I'm certainly like, it's going to be there.
Right.
And it's okay for it to be there. But at some point you're like maybe romanticizing it, and it starts to
totally
be pointless.
It's like one of those things, like you won't go get therapy because you think it's going to take your edge away. Like, oh no, man, because if it all works out, man, I won't be able to dig deep into my shit anymore.
Right, exactly.
It's the dumbest thing.
It is. Or it's like you need to always be kind of like breaking up relationships because you can only write about heartbreak. And I mean, come on. How many heartbreak songs do we really need? They've been written.
I remember when I was a lot younger, being in a fight with someone, and it was a breakup, and like her saying something that immediately, like, I was so in the zone of like, I've always got to be in like the moment of creation, that like as she's leaving me, she said some kind of line that I was like, fuck, I gotta be able to write this down without seeming like I'm writing it down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you always want to use it.
Right.
I get that.
Right. Yeah, but it's good. You get comfortable. I don't know what it is. It's like the devil you know. Do you know whatever that phrase means? Like you get comfortable with the bad shit, and it's like being in an abusive relationship, but with yourself.
Oh yeah.
Which is pretty weird.
Yeah, well, and I think that the thing that I would say to somebody who would say that to me about wanting to stay in that kind of comfortable place because they know that they can write that way and whatever, is your best songs are probably behind that door that you don't want to open, because I think that the best songs come from being uncomfortable and having new experience. So if you've broken up with the same kind of person 20 times, you're not writing new shit.
No.
Probably.
No. And you should probably see a therapist, because you have a recurring problem that you're creating for yourself all the time.
Yeah, I would say the problem is probably you.
Yeah. Yeah. So where were you born?
I was born in California.
Where in California?
I was born technically in San Francisco, but we lived in the Bay Area in a little town called Lafayette.
That's cool. I lived in a little town there for like a year when I was a kid in Marin County. That's called Nicasio.
Oh, I don't know it, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Because I left pretty young.
How young?
I was 9.
9. What were your parents like professionally?
Not musicians.
Okay.
Although my dad does really love to sing, and he was part of an a cappella choir in college, so I'm sure that had an influence. But they're pretty like straight edge in a way. Like they both worked in finance for a really long time. My dad still does, and they've just both had 9-to-5 jobs kind of their whole lives. So I'm definitely like a curveball, but they are so supportive and always have been. And it's like I think it's a surprise often when I talk about them because they've just always been fervently like, oh no, this is totally your path. And as long as it's the path you want to be on, it's your path. So whatever, needs to happen, it's going to happen.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Those guys are hard to find.
I know.
I
got really lucky.
I had one like that and then one not like that.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And were they still together?
No, they weren't together. They weren't together. And for a reason, because their life philosophies followed those lines where one was like, oh, this is, yeah, of course. What else are you going to do?
I would imagine that's really hard to co-parent when the other person, has a different approach.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So at what age you moved to New York? When you were 9?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we moved to the suburbs, but I had a relationship with the city, like New Yorkers like to say, from a really young age. We started going in often as a family, but I started going in to take meetings with people and play showcases for record labels when I was 12.
Okay. Let's get to this. Two things. Let me take an aside, and then we're going to get back on this path because I'm fascinated with this part of your life story.
Okay.
Are you a fan of Laura Nyro?
I am, but I have a really funny story about Laura Nyro. If we have time, I'd love to tell it.
We have all the time you want.
Okay, good. So I didn't really know who Laura Nyro was until I was 16. And I learned about Laura Nyro because through a confluence of crazy events, I had a lawyer who represented Liza Minnelli. And he was 85 years old. His name was Alan Arrow. I'm pretty sure he's not with us anymore because this was kind of a long time ago. I was, maybe I was 17, but I was a kid. And so he represented Liza Minnelli, Art Garfunkel, and Isaac Hayes' estate because Isaac had just passed. And we had just kind of been through some dark shit, some dark industry shit, getting taken advantage of. I particularly got taken advantage of, but as a family, we got taken advantage of. And this man was trying to make stuff happen for me because he believed in me. I also think he took pity on me because he had learned what had just happened. And one day he asked me to come into New York City, and he wouldn't tell me where we were going, but he asked me to come to New York City and meet him on the Upper East Side. So I did. He takes me to this fancy apartment building right on Park Avenue, and we get in the elevator, and he goes, so we're going up to Liza's apartment. So elevator opens, we knock on the door, Liza Minnelli opens the door, full makeup, sweatpants head to toe, Liza Minnelli in all of her glory and everything that you think she is. She's exactly the way that she is. Have you seen Arrested Development?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Liza Minnelli.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of hers.
She is. Then should you ever meet her? I don't know if you've gotten to meet her.
No,
she is.
But I would love to.
Everything. She's everything you want her to be, and she's so kind. She welcomes me right into her apartment, which was a lot of it was under construction, and anything that wasn't under construction was just mirrors or posters of her and shows that she'd been in. And she takes me to this room that's not under construction, which is the piano room. And the piano room is one big couch, wall of mirrors, a big, maybe it was a baby grand, but I remember it as a grand because we remember our memories grander. And then one wall of windows looking out over Central Park. And I get to play all my songs for Liza Minnelli. And she just sits there, and then she comes and sits next to me on the piano and starts going okay, can you play that part again? Can you play that chorus again? What if you repeat that part? Okay, this part's really, really good. So she's editing my songs with me. And then she goes, have you ever heard of Laura Nyro? And I had not heard of Laura Nyro. And she told me that I reminded her of Laura Nyro, took my hand, took me into her bedroom, which was kind of a mess, and then was crawling on the floor looking for a Laura Nyro record in her closet for 45 minutes. She never found it. But from that day on, I knew who Laura Nyro was, and every now and then somebody will ask me, do you know who Laura Nyro is? You remind me of her. And I always think of Liza.
Boom, I'm 52 years old. That's why I think maybe not younger. My connection with her is weird because I never knew. I knew her name from stuff I read when people would compare her to people in journalism because I'd read rock magazines when I was a kid. And then I finally found her in my 20s, and then realized the songs that she wrote. That my favorite song, first song I walked around singing, is this song "Eli's Comin'." But I knew the Three Dog Night version, but she wrote that song. So I not only was I, you know what I mean? I had actually been singing her songs my whole life. What a surprise!
Yep.
Okay, so. You started playing piano and writing songs. Like, when did you start playing piano?
I think I was 5 or 6. I don't remember the exact one, but it was 5 or 6.
Okay, and then you started writing your own songs when you were 8. Okay, so then how did the connection come? Were you like, hey, Mom, let's go shop this stuff, and I need to do some showcases at 12? At the Knitting Factory.
No. I mean, yeah, I did play at the Knitting Factory a lot. Well, I don't remember a time when I wasn't saying, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And it just was like before I was writing songs. I was basically already writing songs before I technically said I'm writing songs. Like I was just always coming up with stuff in my head. I always felt like I'm a musician. This is my job. I watch music videos on TV. I listen to records. That's me. And I was really vocal about it. And my parents, I think my parents said that there was a shift where it was just like a little girl talking about her dreams and they wanted to be supportive, to this like, oh, maybe we should take this kind of seriously. And I think that happened when I was around 11 or 12. My first time in the studio, I recorded some demos with my neighbor's dad, who was a producer who worked mostly with classical musicians. And he demoed stuff out for me, like helped me kind of edit my songs in a more cohesive fashion. And all of a sudden we had a demo. So my parents then saw this advertisement in the local newspaper that was from this management duo specifically looking for young people who wanted to be stars. And they were like, we don't know anybody in the music business. Let's reach out to these people. And they were my first managers. They were like tangentially involved in managing the Backstreet Boys at some point. So they had like,
but not that creepy guy, right?
No, these were two women.
Okay.
And so they had like something involved with the Backstreet Boys and with like real music business stuff, but they were clearly like not super legit people. You know, they were sending out like want ads in the newspaper. I know now, like that's not really usually how you find the real big guns in the music business. But they showcased, they had me showcase for real labels. I showcased for like Hollywood Records and a few others that I don't remember.
What?
And
sorry, go ahead. Finish, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I met my first lawyer, Howard Sadowski, who was like a real big time lawyer, and he was like Eminem's lawyer and had a big fancy office in New York, and like we did photo shoots, and it was some real experience. And then from there I just kept meeting different people, having different experiences.
When you showcased, how did you do it? Did you play by yourself? Did you have a band? Did you sing to tracks? What the hell was going on?
I played piano and sang. That's all I've ever done.
What kind of pressure, though? Like, I guess maybe because you were young, because I remember...
I get so much more nervous now.
Right, yeah. But what a weird head trip to be in, like, as a kid, you know? I wanted to do it like I wanted that when I was 16. I took a meeting with a pretty big manager at the time, and he was like, well, go write songs and like be in like a high school band or something, dude. I'm still friends with that guy this many years later. Yeah. But you know, like that's just, it's odd to me when people do that, and like how odd it must be for a kid, because did you understand the gravity of everything that was happening beyond, outside of you making music, and people saying like, oh, we like you?
I mean, yes and no. I just was always really sure about what I wanted and what my priorities were. I was really, really good at protecting the thing that I loved and cared about the most. And it started a practice of making decisions that protected that. So I had friends in school, but I was always going between this like world of being in my friend group, having these shared experiences, and going, okay, you know what? That's actually not going to serve me well. I need to go over here and get ready for this thing I'm going to do, or I really want to spend all of my time writing songs, or like whatever it was. So for some reason, I knew that it was important to be really focused and that there was pressure, but it didn't it didn't affect my nerves the way that it does now. Right. I think I just believed in myself so much. When you're that age and people are positively reinforcing what you're doing, you just think that you're invincible. And I really think I was just like, I got this. Like, I did that other thing the other day. I can do this. It takes age to get to that point where you start realizing your own fallibility.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. This is amazing. So, okay. So you're working with these Backstreet Boys people. You're showcasing for Hollywood Records and all these other labels. So, and you got the lawyer guy, and what happened? You got signed, right?
I didn't get signed for a long time. No. And I met plenty of other people and had plenty of other almost experiences until I signed my first record deal. So that whole outfit fizzled. Like, there was just like a nervous breakdown from one person over in one corner. And eventually the management thing, just like we parted ways, and my lawyer became the person who advocated for me. And he introduced me to some like musicians in Brooklyn, and I started recording with them, and that was cool, but nothing really ever happened. And then there's a lot like, and sometimes it's funny when I do interviews that reach into this part of my life, because different memories pop out. Like I haven't talked about those particular. I think they called their management company like Jelly Babies or something. And I haven't talked about them in years. I haven't thought about them in years, but they're just, I was just so constantly pushing forward and going like, okay, this is fizzled. Who else do I need to meet? How else do I get myself on the path? So it took until I was 23. Maybe I was 22. Like 22, 23 to sign a record deal.
Okay, so what was...
Which, of course, everybody knows is the end-all, be-all. Once you sign the record deal, then you've made it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's unbelievable. Talk about that cycle of abuse isn't just with yourself. That one, you're contractually bound. My therapist, at one point, I was signed to a label that was a subsidiary of Elektra Records that was owned by Lars Ulrich from Metallica. And when we left the label, we didn't get dropped. We actually said like, hey, sorry, this wasn't working for everyone here. We would like to go away. You leave us alone. And my therapist actually said that I was contractually bound to a cycle of abuse during that time. Okay, so in those years between, what were you doing? Did you have a band? Did you tour? Did you just write and do showcases? What was happening?
I never had my own band. I sometimes played with like one other person, and actually in that time it was usually a drummer. There were a couple of guys that I would like exclusively play with, so it would be me on piano and playing my songs, and a drummer, usually playing percussion, not like a full set. But I've always been kind of a lone wolf in that sense. I've never like had my band and we all share in it. Like I've hired people, and then as time has gone on, I've like had people that I like to continue to go back to. But it's always kind of like, this is my ship, and I kind of change the pieces out and switch them around as time goes on. But I was writing constantly and playing shows in New York.
Like
I went to
Rockwood Music Hall or something? They have a piano.
Yeah, I played at Rockwood. I played at the Bitter End a lot. I played at the Knitting Factory a lot. I had not toured. I didn't tour until I made my first record, or my first record that actually came out in the world. So that was kind of a later in life thing, but I was playing at least once a week for years in the city. And, you know, I met a couple of house music DJs in Brooklyn at one point and was making music with them. And when I was 17, I met the person who co-produced my first record. His name's Peter Zizzo, because I was being courted by Epic Records, and they had sent me around to write with a bunch of people, which is something I don't normally do, but I was being like courted by this giant label, and I was like, I was like, yes, I'll do whatever is being asked of me by the record label overlords.
Right.
And I met Peter, who I loved writing with. We wrote a beautiful song that I still love when we first met. And then Peter sat me down and said, hey, listen, I don't think you should be writing with a bunch of people. Like, I think you should keep doing what you do and see what happens, because you have your own voice right now and you're really young. And like, I'm really curious to see what happens if you keep nurturing that, because sometimes what happens when you get sent around a million times to lots of different co-writers is
become a product.
Start to sound like everybody else. Yeah. And that was kind of happening, like, wasn't happening yet, but I could see it happening, because a lot of these rooms that I was being put in, I would walk in and there would be like two other people in the room. They would have already written a song. It would be already recorded, except for like, maybe there's some room in the lyric to change it, and they'd be like, why don't you like sing it and see if you like it, and we can call it a co-write. And I was just like, that's just not why I'm doing this. Like, that doesn't really feel good in my body, and I just don't, it doesn't feel like music to me. So I'm really grateful to Peter, because he saw that in me and gave me a reason to really stand up for it. Like, I think at such a formative age, it's really important that somebody else can validate those feelings for you, because this industry is so confusing and there's so many ways to be successful and so many paths to being successful, but they only work if they're your path and if they're in line with who you are. And it was so wonderful to have somebody see who I was and say, you're on the right path, keep going. So, yeah.
So what label signed you then?
So Wind Up Records in New York City. They were based in New York City. They were best known for Creed.
Yeah,
and
baby.
Evanescence and Seether and Filter. And I hadn't heard of them, but we were shopping. Peter and Mike, the other producer of my first record, and I were shopping around. We'd made like an EP of 4 songs or so. And the owner of Wind Up had just taken his own life, sadly. So the label was kind of like a totally new place. There was new ownership, there was new leadership, and with that ownership was like a new intention. Like they wanted it to be a different kind of a label. So I was one of the first signings that was like, okay, we're not going to be an active rock label really anymore. Like we want to be a like more singer-songwriter, maybe indie sounding label. And so it was kind of like an experiment.
There's I feel like a terrible person, but we're both musicians. We can talk openly to each other.
Yeah.
I had this idea that you were about to say, like, we decided to no longer put out music that is very terrible to listen to. I don't know if you like all those bands on there, but all of those bands were not my favorite bands when they were around.
I'll say that I wasn't deeply familiar with the catalog of any of those bands.
Yeah, that sort of modern rock. I think that's what it was called.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
Yeah, well, I wasn't there because because I felt like I fit in with the previous roster. But you know, they had a lot of money, and they really believed in me. And I said to myself, I'm going to get to make a real record.
Yeah.
Someone else is paying for it, and they really, really, really like me.
Yeah.
So that seems like a better situation than some other situations. Now, granted,
they're getting lost
I've
in the
gotten
shuffle
out.
like Epic or something.
yes.
Okay, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And I still, you know, I ended up signing a pretty terrible deal that I am really grateful to be out of. And there was a lot of ground shifting and a lot of tumult that happened. And they are no longer in existence. So that was also a difficult thing to kind of endure and try to keep my career alive through.
Did you, real quickly, did you leave the label too?
I did. Well, I left after I had been, so Wind Up was in existence and their own label when they first signed me. We made my first record, they put it out, and then they were acquired by Concord, which is a big company that owns a lot of labels. I made my second record. Wind Up was still intact, but they were owned by Concord. Made the second record with Dave Cobb here in Nashville. And a few months later, Wind Up was dissolved. So I was floating underneath the Concord umbrella without a home with a record that I had just made, and I didn't know anybody. So Rounder here in Nashville ended up taking on the record and putting it out. But I was not feeling like it was really supported, or it wasn't the same feeling as being at Wind Up. For all of the things that went wrong at Wind Up, they invested their hearts really deeply into what I was doing. And, you know, I was in a new place and I was a newbie. So after I made and put out my most recent record, I kind of was trying to figure out if I could get out, because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get that initial kind of like, we're going to die for this feeling with that deal that I was still in, having been an inherited artist. So my lawyer actually became the president of Rounder and helped me get out of my deal. So I got to walk away without kind of any debt or anything, which was a really, really big gift.
Yeah, that is a great gift.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. So then that record, All I Ever See in You Is Me, that came out in 2017, and you toured for that?
I did. I toured a bit for it. I played, I went on some tours across the country. It was fun. Felt good.
Okay. I did tell you that song Bunny is amazing, right? Did I?
No, I didn't. No.
Jesus, man. I was blown away.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was really blown away. That song is, you're just a really, you're a really special artist. Who was the guy that you wrote with that gave you the advice to keep going on your own?
Peter Zizzo.
Okay, what song did you write with you for that first record?
Well, no one has ever heard
Oh,
it.
okay.
So one of Peter's, as a result of, maybe not directly as a result of that conversation, but I have not put out one song that I've written with another person.
Oh, okay. So everything you've put out. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. There was a different sound. There was a song, and I should have written down the name of it. I'm sorry I didn't. But it had like these almost like big huge tom things, and it was very
From the first record?
personally empowering kind of like.
Was it
chorus.
Torpedo?
Torpedo. Boom. That's
Yeah.
the song. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting where you've gone as a songwriter. So sorry, real quickly, these songs, you moved to Nashville, and there you met your husband. Mm-hmm. And you wrote these songs for this record, and you got together with Joe Pisapia. That's how you say it?
Pisapia.
Pisapia, sorry.
That's okay.
Joe Pisapia, and did this record. What were you doing for those 4 years? Like, you moved from New York to Nashville. How did all that happen?
Well, I moved from New York to LA.
Okay.
I lived in LA for a year. I
How'd you like
wrote
that?
a lot. I liked it. I mean, I think LA is really fun in a lot of ways. I loved the weather. I loved being back in California. That felt like I was kind of reconnecting with a part of me, even though Southern California and Northern California are very different. I was at the time dating my guitar player, and we moved to LA together, and we were like almost like a duo. Like, because we were romantically involved and playing music together, he was very, very involved in the music that we were making. And he had a big impact on me sonically. So I had just made this kind of pretty pop record. And then he and I were playing together, and he was really informed by Americana music and classic country music, and introduced me to a lot of that, because I didn't really grow up listening to a lot of that. I mean, I grew up listening to Joni Mitchell, and because my dad loves Reba, I listened to Reba a little bit, but that was kind of the extent of my knowledge. I mean, and Joni is certainly not a country musician, but she's just like a rootsier kind of like, she's a folk musician. So we lived in LA and actually did start a band. That is the only band I've ever been in. And I just kind of knew that I needed to extricate myself from all of it. Like, it just didn't, I just knew that something needed to change. So Dave and I agreed to make this next record together, and he was based in Nashville. So I came to Nashville. I had broken off with my ex-boyfriend and quit the band. And Dave and I made this record, and he and everybody else who worked on the record persuaded me to move here. So I did. It didn't really take much persuading. I was kind of like, you know, loving the sunshine in LA, but feeling like it was going to be really hard to be there, having left all of the things that made up my existence in LA.
Right.
You know, like, I didn't have any people there anymore, and that was weird, and I was excited to go and start somewhere new on my own. So the first couple of years here were about making friends and, you know, becoming part of the Nashville community, putting out that record, trying to make my way through the Concord system, which was pretty challenging at times, and trying to understand like where my career was now, and how to find some control when when that was a hard thing to do. And then eventually, well, I met my husband 3.5 years ago. So I guess I've been in Nashville for almost 5 years. So a lot of that I was actually like starting to plant my feet on the ground and going like, oh, I think I'm finding my people now. And the whole time writing a shitload of songs and playing shows and sometimes going out on tour. But a lot of it was allowing myself to just be
And live.
and stay somewhere. Yeah, I was really used to leaving. I mean, even when I lived in New York, I moved every 2 years because I needed the change.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, so you put this record out, and now what happens under a pandemic? Like, what do you do outside of going on your computer and talking to people like me? What else can you do in this situation to sort of spread the word about a record?
It's a good question. I think we're making it up as we go along.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with using these opportunities to use our computers in our house and learn how to be good at that, and learn how to communicate something to new people that feels exciting. I've definitely sat in front of my computer more hours than I ever thought I would during this pandemic. It's about, I think, trying to create moments of joy for people. That's been a big focus of mine. And I'm lucky that I made a record that was centered around that anyway. Yeah. So I can lean into that. I've been pretty focused on that. Like, whatever I'm putting out into the world, I want it. I think you got to be either really, really honest and to a point where if it's not going to be something that lifts someone up out of something, it at least helps them through something.
Yeah.
But otherwise, there's got to be something that like makes something feel better. So I don't know beyond that really what is possible right now. I'm just trying to be patient and hope that when touring comes back, we'll all still be able to do it.
Yeah. Do you get into the live stream movement?
Well, I've been doing this really fun thing actually. So I haven't gone into the paid live stream like I'm gonna bring my band on board and spend a bunch of money to do it kind of thing right yet, because it's just kind of felt like I don't know, there's just so many of those happening right now. Yeah. But I've started this series on my Instagram Live called Artist Brain, where I kind of am in your role, and I ask artist friends of mine, some of whom I know and have a long history with, and some of whom I admire and just reach out to cold. I just talk to them about their process and how they're doing. And it's been a really cool way to be like live and doing the streaming thing and present with people who are paying attention, and also feel like connected to my musical community and try. It's like sort of catharsis as well, because we kind of all need each other right now.
Yeah.
So that's been my live streaming game.
That's really cool. That's been it's interesting that this format has taken the conversation of people talking about what they do, or what's informed their artwork, has really taken off during this time, because it is something that people can do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and there are a few things that I find more inspiring than listening to someone talk about what lights them up and what gets them in the flow. I just love process so much.
Yeah.
It's unendingly interesting to me.
What are the things that get you in the flow?
Here we go. That's a good question.
I just stole your show. No, I'm just joking.
Well, lately I've been noticing that when I am present and like have been able to take the time out to meditate and probably go for a walk and just like really in touch with what is beautiful about here and now, that helps me get in the flow. That gives me enough space in my brain to start like having some fun with words and be curious. Because when I'm not in that place, this year in particular, it gets really heavy and stuck. And I maybe used to be somebody that really could write when I was like not feeling so hot. But now I find that it's really hard. I mean, if there's pain that is from a really specific thing that's not about self-loathing or any of these kind of like ego-driven pains, then I can write about it. But I think so much of this year has been about trying to kind of get over those like mindfuckery moments. And when I can lift myself out of it and just be like in a state of gratitude, it really helps me write.
That's amazing. That's great. That's another thing I bet a lot of self-loathing songwriters would argue with you about.
Oh, I'm sure.
I can't have gratitude, man. It's going to take away my edge.
Yeah, I mean, whatever works for people. It doesn't work for me anymore. I think it did
Sure.
at some point.
Right.
But
yeah.
I just don't believe it anymore. Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah.
I think you have to believe it to be able to really write well about it. And I just don't believe that I am the worst. And I'm really glad that I don't believe that anymore.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're a brilliant artist, and I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Yeah, you're really you're an enlightened person. And I'm amazed at the experiences that you've gone through, that you're still doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised.
Aren't you glad you didn't become a star though when you were 12? Wouldn't that have been weird?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think it just would have been different. I think knowing the stability that I had at such a young age, it would have been okay.
Yeah.
And finding so many twists and turns and so many like kind of almost moments had its own weird thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that we all ended up where we are, but it would have been fine if it hadn't, you know. But I am really glad that I've never doubted that I would keep doing this. I think that's the thing that allows me to keep doing it. Just that, like, it's so deeply embedded in me that there's just no way.
Yeah.
There's just no way I'm not going to be doing it. Yeah.
Question about one last question I have for you is Champagne Supernova. You did a great job with that. And
thank you.
I'm a huge Oasis fan. Are
Nice.
you?
I would say that I am a big fan of that song, and I am not an Oasis fan. I just haven't really spent a lot of time with their deep catalog.
Yeah.
That song is a song that brings me back to my childhood, because my brother was a huge Oasis fan, and we used to listen to that song on repeat in his bedroom when I was like 6 years old or something. And I've been really missing my brother a lot lately. He lives across the country and has 3 beautiful children and a wonderful wife, and we don't get to see each other very much. So kind of part of my doing that song was a way of communicating with him.
That's beautiful. Man, it's been a real pleasure meeting you, Jillette. And
You too.
yeah. I hope that someday I get to see you play live. Maybe we could do this again when you're on tour here.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that. I mean, Austin is always at the top of my list of places to be. So
Good, good.
I'm sure we'll see each other someday soon.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. It's a beautiful day, and I Love You is a great album. I'll direct people to all the different places in the intro and the outro of the show, but people can find you at JilletteJohnson.com and, of course, on all the social media places.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great meeting you. Thank you so much for doing the show.
You too. My pleasure.
That way, it's not okay. It's not okay that you forgive her anyway. It's not okay.
Jillette Johnson. Her album, It's a Beautiful Day and I Love You, drops this Friday, February 12th. What a great conversation. Nashville artist Jillette Johnson. Find her at JilletteJohnson.com. Great talking to her, man. Great talking to her. These songs are great. She actually does such a great version of Champagne Supernova. You got to check that out. So go to Jillette Johnson for all your Jillette Johnson needs. And don't forget that you can subscribe to this podcast wherever it is that you find podcasts, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, Overcast, Podbean, which is the one platform where you can find all of the shows, over 1,000 shows of How Did I Get Here, 1,000 episodes of How Did I Get Here, available on the Podbean app. Anyway, new shows for the month of February, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. 3 shows a week for the month of February. I hope that you enjoyed my conversation with Jillette Johnson. Find her at JilletteJohnson.com. Her record, It's a Beautiful Day and I Love You, drops this Friday, February 12th. Get it and enjoy the rest of this song. Forgive her. And have a great week, whatever it is you're doing. Also, hey, don't forget to let us know what you think of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominations. Let me know. Go to How Did I Get Here on Facebook and let us know. All right? Let's get down.
All you need is time, more time to find compassion. Draw another line, draw a line in the sand for protection. Forgive her, she becomes a little kid. You never should have been treated that